Okay, so today I'm with Crash Underride, a fellow YouTuber, and we're doing a debate on gender. He saw a video I did about the gender binary, or the lack thereof, in my opinion, and he did a response video to this. And initially, I did my own response video, but it didn't really work out properly. So instead, uh, we're going to do a live debate, and that's going to be good. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Crash.
There's not really much to say. I'm just, you know, some schmuck with a camera, with a computer, and the internet. So, well, basically a schmuck with a computer, the internet, and an opinion.
Fair enough.
Ba-
That's pretty much sums up most things.
Basically, a bad combination.
Hmm. Anyway, I'll let you take it away as you had the initial criticisms, so you can begin.
Okay. Well, it wasn't really a criticism. It was more of a confusion because the terms sex and gender are used by different people interchangeably all the time. I half the time I don't know if someone's talking about their biological gender or how they feel, their attitudes about how they feel sexually and all that.
Mm.
She's completely asexual. I'm like, okay, cool, fine. But people, sometimes like they have male genitals but feel female and vice versa. Or and some don't feel either way. But sometimes, like with your video, I was led the confusion with me was that you were of the mindset that there are more than two biological genders or
Um,
sexes, whichever term you prefer.
well, no, I can't remember if I did interchangeably use the term sex and gender in the video. I don't think I did,
Oh, not you
because
specifically, but just like so many people in general throughout my life, I've heard the terms used interchangeably. It's really
mm,
confusing.
well, that's understandable because for most of human history, we've sort of just seen it as the same thing. Like through primary school, for instance, you're taught essentially that you see sex and gender as the same thing. You're taught, oh, men and women, and
Exactly.
because people don't really have it challenged beyond that, it's understandable that lots of people just sort of use it interchangeably. But as we're going into a more progressive thought-based age where we can sort of understand gender and sex and all these different ideas, we can see there is a difference between sex and gender. And my video referring to gender stated that, yeah, there is more than two. And confining it to a binary is unscientific and reductive. And referring to what you're saying about how biological genders and stuff, gender isn't biological. Sex is to do with biology. But even then, the research that scientists are doing, I'll show them, is more than just male and female. There's intersex and stuff, and the genitalia is not solely male. A woman can have a penis. A man can have a vagina. It's not as straightforward as just saying, "Oh, this is one, this is the other." So I'll let you respond to those points.
Yeah, my mindset was, was biologically, there's two sets of genitalia. There's I jokingly refer to it as tab A into slot B because I can be juvenile sometimes. But there are two participants to reproduce, two sets of genitals that are required. There's no like, third, fourth, fifth. Basically my point is that, it's an A and A plus B equals C being the child.
Mm.
And
So
so
this is,
many people, go ahead.
like, you go ahead. I've already spoken.
Um, so many people use the terms interchangeably and then just basically confused because I've heard you use one term for biological gender and all that, and then I've heard other people use it as sex and then vice versa, and it's so confusing at times. So I'm just like, okay, consistency is what is needed here
Mm.
because
Um,
that's one of the big concerns. Like, I mean, feelings do matter for especially I mean for me because I don't go actively out of my way to be an asshole of people. I mean, if that happens, that's gonna happen in life. But I don't actively go out of my way to do that. And like, yeah, oh crap, brain fart. I think, yeah, I don't actively go out of my way to insult people and offend people. But Oh crap! I can't remember what I was gonna say now.
No worries, no
Oh,
worries. Will it come back to you in time? Shall I go on with a few things I was going to say in response to you, or?
yeah, go ahead.
So I've got three things written down here. I'll start from the top. You said feelings do matter, but things are going to happen. Well, I have a slightly better, more nuanced
Oh,
approach to that,
yeah.
which is, of course, feelings are important. And if we look at what people are doing to trans people, they're just railing at them, saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter how you feel. Oh, it's just natural biology," just screaming all these different like sort of nonsense bile towards them, and ignoring what they're saying, which plays into the next one, which you're saying people use sex and gender interchangeably. That's not going to
Mm-hmm.
change until you get rid of the mindset that trans people can just be attacked and abused and harassed, and it's okay because it just happens, like you said. Or a lot like you said in your little dialogue that it's going to happen, like feelings are going to get hurt, but there's no need for this to happen if we just move beyond this sort of reductive mindset. Certainly in the case of trans, like the non-binary people and stuff, like because there's no point to consistently sort of seeing them as freaks and wrong and stuff, because they're not. There's no science exists to deny their existence. And coming on to what you
Yeah.
said about reproduction, yeah, fine. Like you need male and female to make a baby and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not the same thing as that means there's only two genders. Because can you prove that reproduction is what determines gender? Is reproduction all that is necessary to show there are only two sexes? Like, what about intersex? What about people who don't have the capabilities of producing children, who are male and female? Like, it's not defined enough and it's not consistent enough to be just the rule, because it's not the case.
Well, let me find it here because I can't remember where I read it, but biological sex was basically determined by the what's the word, the either having or not having a Y chromosome.
Yeah,
I
XX and
cannot.
XY.
Yeah. So I mean, if somebody's got one or the other, that's fine. But yeah, I remember what I was going to say earlier. About not going out of my way to offend people. But I mean, that'll unavoidably happen, and it's not like I'm actively going to do that sort of thing. But I mean, it's it's gonna happen, and
So were you saying something,
okay,
or did you just
yeah,
cut out there?
I had a brain fart.
Okay, no worries. Well,
Oh, I
again,
hate
you
those.
say you don't want to like offend people,
Hmm.
um, but then you make a video saying, "Oh, I don't understand science," and you essentially criticize a lot of the ideas that are in there. And yeah, fine, obviously anyone can criticize anything, but it's like when you're railing against non-binary people, and saying, "Oh, well, there's only two genders, it's against science." It's like, well, you are like actively going to offend people, because you're essentially siding with those on the far right and those who are of a bigoted mindset, that essentially their worldview is correct and that trans people are available to be harassed and demeaned by
Oh,
anti-science.
I have absolutely no problem with trans people whatsoever. But what I was meaning was science, has shown that biologically humans are a binary sex, species, male and female, while
But
there
why?
are genetic anomalies such as being born with both sets of genitals.
But
But
yeah, you go ahead.
I thought I heard reverb, but I mean, yeah, there are I'm not saying transgender people are open for bullying. I have no problem with transgender people whatsoever. In fact, harassing someone because they're trans, I have a major problem with. But it's the fact that my big thing is when they talk about biological sex, male and female. You can, if somebody says or is talking about how they feel inside, but use the term sex, I want them to specify which they mean: sex as in biological, or gender as in how they feel, how their attitude about it. Because gender wise, with your attitude, you can feel however you want. That's fine. but biologically there are two distinct genders, and there's not like XX, Y. There's there's. I hate to use the term default, but that's the best way to describe it. There are two default
But
sexes.
I
And
mean, it's not even quite that simple though, because I mean, you say humanity is a binary species, but that's like we're past the point where that's the thing. Like you're going on about reproduction, or going on to probably not the best way to describe it. You're talking about reproduction, and yeah, fine, that's true. But look where humanity is. It's past the point where its main goal is just breed, create offspring to ensure the future of our species. Um, like it's beyond that point. We're clearly at a stage where like we have far more in our lives than just reproducing and like protecting our young and stuff. We are capable of thinking about gender. Hence why we have gender and sex as two separate things. Um, so to say like, oh, humanity is this, to have the definition based on like primal instincts, I think is quite poor to do. And when you say, yeah, fine, oh, biological sex is male and female, which isn't even actually correct, because yeah, intersex exists, and you can say XXY isn't one of the initial starting chromosome bases, but it's still a thing. Like people are still born with those chromosomes, and I don't think it's fair to just like say, oh, these are default people, you're abnormal. It's like they're still valid because like that's the way they are. Like they have fine, they've got an extra X, an extra Y, or whatever, but that's still valid. You can't erase that from their genetic makeup and stuff. And when you go
oh,
on about biological sex, like when you go exclusively focus on that and consistently say to non-binary people, oh yeah, well you are trans and you are non-binary, but here's your biological sex and here's this and here's that, you're not really a man or woman. It's like, well, you're aiding them. You're not directly being transphobic, but you're aiding people who do seek to be transphobic. You're not helping the situation for the trans people. You're not making it easier for trans people to be accepted, because there's a lot of abuse and stuff, and like like what's it called, passive negativity towards trans people, just by the way society is still in the binary, and by constantly reaffirming and reassuring people that, oh yeah, society and humanity, it's a binary. That's only going to harm things. So I think it's actually quite harmful to like consistently use the whole idea of binary just over and over again.
okay, hang on just a second. But yeah, what I was talking, the definitions. Uh, just that quick, I forgot what I was going to say.
No worries.
I hate days like this. I just start to say something and completely forget, and it's driving me nuts.
Happens to the best of us. So you have something written down, or was it just like in your mind? I take notes normally during debates, so I don't like forget things.
Actually, I was going to send you this because it's what I've got up on when I was talking about the PDF.
You might be able to screen share. Maybe you can read a bit then. But
the PDF from the APA, the Americans. Yeah, okay, I did. American Psychological Association. That's it.
Okay.
It's the definitions of sex and gender, and then it's the definitions related to sexual orientation and gender diversity in APA documents.
Yeah. Okay. And give us a reading of that, or give us like what you took from that.
Okay, let me find them. Okay. Damn it, where'd it go?
I mean, I'm looking at it now, and it lists 3 things here, which is more than 2. Sex refers to a person's biological status and is typically categorized as male, female, or intersex. So not only it doesn't actually say there's only this set amount, it says it's typically categorized as these 3 things. So it's not even correct to say, using this source, that biological sex is a binary. So do you not see a problem then with going on the basis that sex is a binary, when literally the source you've pulled up doesn't even support that?
Well, actually, I'm reading it real quick because I didn't get a chance to read it earlier.
You didn't read the source?
No, I mean, I read a good portion of it. I didn't get to read the whole thing. because my internet was acting up earlier, so I had to download it.
Okay, fair enough. But I mean, I'm happy to screen share if you want, and everyone else can read it. Hold on a second. Where do I have to do screen share? Okay, so if we all see this bit here, when this comes up on the thing, zoom it in as well. Right. So, yeah, it says sex refers to a person's biological status and is typically categorized as male, female, or intersex, quite clearly, as I've highlighted there. This is the source that my opponent in the debate today has provided, and it states that biological state. This says three things. Intersex is quite clearly listed alongside male or female, and yeah, fine, it's not as common as those two, but you can't use that to you can't deny that intersex is a thing, and these people who are intersex and not male or female, they're perfectly valid. There's no legitimate grounds to treat them as like science abnormalities. They're just a normal part of life.
When there's something, as they've actually used the term genetic mutation before, not me specifically, but I mean medical professionals have, that kinda would make kind of lean towards the point that gender is binary and this is being born intersex is abnormal, especially when they eventually have to choose, end up removing one set of the genitals, or at least they used to, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean,
when
like mutation doesn't express mutation doesn't actually necessarily mean abnormal. It just means like change. Mutate is just another word for change. It's just obviously it's got sort of like connotations of abnormality because of the way it's been used in the media and stuff, but it's different to, it's not like people who are mutated are abnormal and different. It's not that at all. And again, you're saying gender binary. You yourself are using the terms interchangeably because of the way we're raised, and when we're completely different. Someone's gender isn't defined by their sex. Not only are there more than two sexes, as your source just showed, but we're also at a point where we can see that people don't have to be male or female. Like you said, people don't have to choose between their genitalia. I'm not sure how the genital surgery works, but it's not at the end of the day, it's not really of that much importance. It doesn't matter what is between their legs. They can be whichever gender they express themselves as.
Oh, they can, yes. But what I mean is, what I'm talking about is biological, not emotional. I'm just talking, usually
But
with.
Why does it matter what is biological though? Like, say you meet someone in the street and they say, "Oh, I'm a trans woman." Like, are you going to say, "Oh, well, biologically you're male. Biologically you have XY chromosomes." Or XX. I can't remember which one. Show in a second.
Well, see, that was my confusion earlier with your video and a lot of other people's. It was like people were saying biologically there are more than two, or the occasional intersex. Like there's like other sets of genitals floating around and all this and that. That was my point. Is that no, the two main, of course there's intersex or what used to be called hermaphrodites occasionally. There are they're male and female. That was my point. It
but
wasn't about.
How can you call genitalia male and female though? How can you use that to say, oh well, life is a binary and stuff? I don't think that's particularly accurate, because is there any, as we've already seen, and as even with like sex primarily being male and female, like it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It's not always the case. So like it's wrong scientifically. It's incorrect to say all men have penises, all women have vaginas. And even without this, like there's no need to constantly sort of demand that people recognize that sex is a binary, because not only is it wrong, but it doesn't matter. Like even if you were right in this instance, like why would it matter if a non-binary person had a distinct biological sex in quotation marks, and they don't. It doesn't affect anything. So society needs to move beyond seeing things as male and female binary, and it still needs to stop constraining people to those standards. I don't think that's particularly fair or scientific.
Well, the way I see it, there's a penis and a vagina. I hate using those terms because I feel like I'm that kid from Kindergarten in that one scene with Arnold.
I've not seen Kindercop. You say?
Kindergarten
I've not seen that film.
Cop. Oh, it's from the early '90s. Arnold plays a cop who goes undercover as a kindergarten teacher. I haven't seen it in about 20 years, but from what I remember, it was pretty funny. That if you've heard the line, "It's not a tumor," that's where it comes from.
Yeah, well,
but the way what I was meaning about biological sex, see, the interchangeability of the words has me flustered. But biological sex, penis and vagina, there's two sets, and binary means two, comes from computers, or most notably with computers, a 0 and a 1.
But it's not quite as easy to translate it across, though, is it? Because, yeah, fine, a computer's 0 and 1, but sex isn't solely determined by genitalia. I mean, yeah, it's for like basic level. Yeah, it's a pretty good indicator. Like penises, most men have penises, most women have vaginas. But there exist people who don't have that, and there's more to sex than that. There's gonads, there's chromosomes. That I don't know all the biological terms because I'm not amazing at science, but your source again lists more things to determine sex with. So you can't say that just because there's two sets of genitalia that are most common, like it's more to it than that. And again, you say there's confusion and there's mixing up of terms and it's interchangeable and stuff. Well, like that's not on the fault of the trans people. It's not a fault of SJWs, as you said in your video. Like it's just society. That's the way society's been. It's not traditionally society's not been very kind to trans people and non-binary people. It's treated them as mentally ill when there's no legitimacy for that. So in order to end this confusion, we need to stop railing against trans people and start incorporating them into modern science because they are. Their science is legitimate. And ultimately, we need to accept that no, the binary is outdated. Some people aren't male or female. Some people are both or non-binary or whatever. And end the sort of attitude where the second we see someone saying what I'm saying, essentially, where there's not a gender binary, we go and like abuse and harass them. Like my fairly innocuous video, like got mass downvoted. I mean, a video was made of it by a larger YouTuber. So that sort of helped, but it shouldn't be so offensive to people to see people saying, "Oh, well, gender isn't a binary." You see people like Riley Dennis, Milo Stewart, Zinnia Jones, like they're saying these ideas and they're getting like loads of abusers and harassers like going after them, and it's not on because they're essentially saying things that are correct. They're saying like modern, updated ideas about sex and gender, and instead they're being like harassed upon, and they've got science to back them up. They're citing studies and like research a lot of the time. And it's pretty like tedious to see constant abuse of them when what they're saying is correct. So I think my ultimate point really is that just we need to move on from binaries when they're not scientifically accurate and they're just used to harm people like through transphobes and transphobia.
I will say this much: the hate and the harassment and the death threats and all that crap needs to stop. I'm sick and tired of seeing people in the skeptic community saying stuff, doing stuff like that to people in the SJW feminist community, whatever you want to call it. I'm tired of seeing people actually on both sides doing stuff like that. It's just gotta stop.
What you say, both sides, but it's more one side. I mean, let's be honest. Like who?
Well, I mean both sides politically, but more specifically the skeptic side of this on YouTube.
Well, even politically, I would disagree there. Certainly there's more of a threat from the right than the left, but we'll save that for another debate. I feel because we're sort of drifting a little bit off. I mean, I think an important question is why does harassment happen? Why do people feel so afraid of this change? Someone in the chat has made a good point. Solar the inept porpoise says people don't like new ideas, and that is essentially it. People don't like moving beyond the gender binary in the same way that people didn't like homosexuality when that started being more publicly acceptable. People are still, I mean, today there's still loads of people who really feel uncomfortable around it, and thus that's why you have a homophobia. It's not as big a deal, but it is still to a degree, because there's people who believe in like white genocide and stuff, like mixed race and like anti-racism and racist attitudes. There, sort of thing. People are still uncomfortable with black people being a thing in society. Like, people don't like change, and when people suggest that gender is more complex than just penises and vaginas, you see people getting angry, and hence why you have these channels which go after trans YouTubers. Hence why so many in the skeptic community are dedicated to painting trans people as like trans women as rapists, or trans or non-binary people as like medically ill. Like you look at Riley Dennis. She's had people say, if you don't want to use these genitals, you're bigoted and transphobic. When she never said that. She said numerous times, "Provide me this link," and no one's ever done it for her, which shows that people are just making it up because they're afraid of what she represents, which is like change to the gender binary. And I give full commendations to them because they do a really great job. But the point is that people fear change. People don't like the fact that the gender binary is pretty outdated, and that these ideas around sex and gender need to move forward because they're wrong. And instead of like embracing the change, and instead of realizing, yeah, we've made mistakes now, but we can move forward, they just rail against trans people. And I feel that whilst we have people, sadly, like you, who are sort of still hammering home the incorrect ideas of binary, and you've got all these people behind you, it's hard for change to happen. So if you really want harassment to stop, you need to stop the source, which is the defense of the gender and sex binary, which are both incorrect.
Complaint is we never know when they're talking about biology or emotion or anything like that, because they use the terms interchangeably.
But I mean, you've said this, but what does it matter? There's not a binary in either of those circumstances. So why would it even matter? Like, they're interchangeable. But why are they interchangeable? Because people like on the right and the transphobes, they've made them. That's sort of why they're interchangeable. Like, they've been made to be the same thing. And by refusing to change that view that sex and gender are the same thing, refusing to move on from that, that's why they remain interchangeable. So you need to be focusing on those within the transphobic circles on the right, on the quote-unquote skeptic community, and saying, well, no, we need to move forward with these ideas. We need to accept and embrace that the gender binary is invalid, and we need to move on. And the sex binary as well, because that's not a thing, as your source showed.
Ouch.
You all
right? I felt like I got stung for a second.
I finished. You can respond to that.
I mean, you do have a point, but like I've said, statistically, being born intersex is an anomaly. So, field or for anything in science, one random anomaly or one random instance would be well, I hate to use the word, but abnormal. Normal with everything else that happens. So
but you wouldn't that's not. I don't think that's a particularly accurate way of looking at it, though. I mean, yeah, fine. It's not a widespread thing. It's not something that's as that common. But that doesn't make it invalid. It doesn't make it not correct. And even if it didn't, you wouldn't. That's not proof to say, gender is a binary. Oh, sorry, sex is a binary. Even it's different to that. And I was going to say something. It's not like you wouldn't say, for instance, that a person with 4 fingers on their hands doesn't have a hand, or still has a 5-fingered hand just because they're anomaly. Most people are born with 5 fingers, but that doesn't invalidate the one with 4 fingers. The person with without a leg or born without proper limbs, like they're not incorrect. It's not like a false to say, that person only has 3 limbs instead of 4. Like, just because something's an anomaly doesn't make it invalid. Again, as Esper has said in the chat this time.
That's just like you said. It wasn't. You agreed basically with me. It's somewhat right there. You also called it an anomaly.
Well, I think the better
So
word is it's not to be expected. It's not the average, but that doesn't make it incorrect. That doesn't make it invalid. That doesn't mean that saying sex isn't. That doesn't mean it can't be included in the discussion of sex and gender or sex even.
well, that's
Like,
but like what I was gonna say was it doesn't necessarily make it its own separate third sex because they were
why not?
born with both sets of genitalia, and usually only one set works, and the other one, like I said earlier, it's last I heard it was removed. If I'm not mistaken, could have I could be because it's the American educational system.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah, but
like,
we're going to this point again. Genitalia doesn't define sex exclusively. As we said, it works for like a basic level, but with complex issues like intersex and stuff, and with more trans people able to express themselves openly, like it doesn't just cut it. And even again, using your own source, chromosomes, gonads. I'll go back to this. Sexual chromosomes, gonads, internal reproductive organs, and external genitalia. So genitalia is one of four things, and it says there's a number of indicators of biological sex. So it's not as simple as just genitalia. There's more to it than that. So you can't just say
yeah,
genitalia is proves as a binary,
damn it.
because it's more to it. So you go ahead. You say something.
But yeah, basically my argument was on a base biological level, two sets of genitals. That's basically that was my argument because I've seen arguments against a gender binary where they didn't come out and say it, but they as they're saying, oh no, they basically implied, and it sounded like they were saying there's more than two sets of genitalia. So, which we know is not the case. So basically, that's what they were. Their delivery, I should say, was wildly off, and it
Um,
may have made their message sound like it was something it wasn't.
I mean,
A whole
it's a
lot of
little
people.
bit I feel as though it's a little bit unfair to condemn people for their delivery being off, because whilst yeah fine you can get confused, like there's more gray areas for confusion, and you're saying things like, oh, I think this, I heard this might have been that, like they're not, it's not very specific, and we look at the source, we look at, you said base biological sex, but that's not the case. The like the thing you cited, yeah, said that sex can be determined by a number of indicators, and genitalia was listed as one of the things. Like again, we keep going round to this. It works on a basic level. If you want to teach like a primary school student a basic like biology genitalia lesson and stuff, then yeah, fine, penis for men, vagina for women. But when you explore it more, when you sort of advance beyond this sort of simplistic worldview, um, you can see it's more complicated than that. And yeah, fine, gender theorists and stuff, they're coming up with new ideas. That doesn't mean they have to be demonized. It doesn't mean they're like trying to destroy science. All they're trying to do is gain some legitimacy for a very oppressed group like trans people. And I feel as though like this whole discussion debate is so like viewed from a negative point of view. There's so much against them that we're not even hearing these sort of not even that wild demands and ideas they have. There's nothing wrong. Like if let's say tomorrow, like it's suddenly written in law that there's more than two sexes and gender is there's as many genders as you want. Like what's that going to change? What is going to happen if that happens? What, you can't like have your worldview anymore? Tough. Like what? Who cares? What's going to change if tomorrow there's like hundreds of genders? Like nothing's going to change. I don't. It's such a trivial thing to be going on about for transphobes. Yet, if all it does is negate and hurt the people who are of this nature, of non-binary or intersex or whatever nature.
I mean, like you said, it wouldn't change a whole lot, but what it would change certainly the whole stereotypical did you just assume my gender thing, where I believe it's in Canada. They're wanting to pass a law that if you accidentally misgender someone, that whole thing is out of hand. That's basically what would change, because you accidentally misgender someone.
See, this I hear a lot of people saying this, like, and yeah, I know there was some sort of like misgendering thing going on up there. But is it actually that you get fines if you misgender someone? Like, is there like a source of that, or is it just like there's like if you keep on misgendering someone, or if you're in a professional environment, like, it can't just be like, oh, you walk down the street, oh hi dude, oh I'm actually a woman, that's a fine. It's not. It's like it's not obviously like that. I think from what I'd read, it was in a professional environment. Like professors were asked to be more considerate and aware of their students' needs and stuff. Like, and again, assuming my gender, like, or sorry, people who say assume my gender, that's more something exaggerated by transphobes and by the so-called skeptics. Like the amount of hyperbole that's given to the skeptic community and stuff, they're sort of given to trans people. Sorry, it's silly to it's ridiculous. Like, hence why Riley J. Dennis can have her words like distorted and absolute lies told about her. Hence why Milo Stewart can have a video that's pretty innocuous saying, "Oh, people have unconscious biases," getting mass downvoted, and like now she's just like harassed all the time. It's like it's ridiculous to see the amount of like rubbish that is spewed about trans and non-binary people over essentially nothing. And I think it's ludicrous to see people still try and claim there's some sort of equilibrium between both sides here. All we need to do really is concede that, as we've seen, sex is not binary, as there's intersex, and there's no like determined, oh, this one factor determines sex. We need to move past the gender binary, and ultimately we can move forward and we stop ourselves from allowing society to be transphobic towards trans people and non-binaries and stuff.
Now, you were saying, about people being transphobic, when a lot of them, I don't think are transphobic. Like, that could be considered by some to be transphobic when they actually aren't. Because I have absolutely no problem with a trans whatever. I have absolutely no problem. So that's one thing else that has been driving me insane. People using terms like transphobic, homophobic, racist, and especially Nazi, and not applying the words to the actual definitions, because they're losing all meaning. Like a whole lot lately.
So give us an example then. Give us an example. Let's use a transphobic / homophobic example, because that's more on topic with what the debate is. Where, in your opinion, has the term transphobic been misapplied?
Oh crap! You had to ask me that quick. I think.
Well, no, it's important, because people say a lot. Oh, it's the left just say it to everyone. SJWs just use it all the time. But then when you actually sort of dig a bit deeper, it's like, well, there was some legitimacy to why they've been called this. So. Or the times when it's not legitimate, it's like they never said it in the first place, like with Riley J. Dennis and like the genitalia preferences. Like, she never said that, but people think she did. So
I wouldn't know about that. I haven't seen Riley's video, so I wouldn't know.
She didn't say it. I'll just tell you that now.
Yeah, a lot of people are known to take things and kind of twist them like that. But like, I've said, like, okay, here's a good example. Some people think this guy's an example because he's a horrible example. Tariq Nasheed, since he's been in the quote unquote news recently.
Sorry, just to interject, your audio cut out a little bit there. Could you start from the beginning again? Sorry.
Okay. I hate to use this guy as an example, but he's been in the quote unquote news recently, and Tariq Nasheed. I've criticized certain things he said on Twitter because they're clearly incorrect about race. Like, if you watch the Philip DeFranco show, you'll know where he got.
I'm sure there are some problems with him, but I more meant a transphobic example to sort of fit with the debate topic of gender.
Well, that's what I was going to.
Oh, sorry, my mistake.
Like if I say something that criticizes Riley Dennis, Milo Stewart, or anybody that's transgender, I immediately get labeled transphobic. Even if it's just something about base, just criticism about their argument, nothing more, transphobic. Or if I criticize someone, you for example, if I would criticize you, somebody would see that and they would call me a racist.
Um,
I get.
Well, I mean, it depends. I don't think people would say that if the argument wasn't racist or transphobic. But going back to Riley and Milo, what are the arguments that you've directed towards them that have been called transphobic, and by whom?
I haven't actually done a video on Milo. Reasons just haven't felt like it. I've done one video on Riley, but it wasn't the video where I was called transphobic. It was something I said on Twitter, which I can't remember what exactly it was. It was something along the lines of I called her argument. I criticized it because she didn't point out like certain things in the argument that could possibly uh, shape the outcome of or shape the result, and I was called transphobic. That's all it. That's all it is.
I mean, like you say, oh, people just call me transphobic for no reason. That example, it's like you can't really remember what you said. So it's like, how can you sort of say that you were called transphobic incorrectly? It's like you said, your video, for instance, towards me, you repeatedly mentioned the gender binary and the like and Sykes binary and stuff, and they're both incorrect. Like, so it's like, for instance, if you were to say, homosexuality is not a real thing, it's just a mental illness. You can be as kind as you want towards gay people. You can be as nice as you want towards gay people, and say nice things. But if you're arguing that homosexuality is an illness and stuff, then you're being homophobic. It's the same thing with this. If you're saying that gender and sex is a binary and eradicating the existence of non-binaries and trans people and trying to essentially undo all the legitimacy and existence they have, then it doesn't matter how polite you are to Riley Dennis and Milo Stewart, you're being transphobic. So to say, oh, well, people just call me transphobic for no reason, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be overtly saying, oh, you're a faggot, oh, you're a tranny to people. You don't have to be so direct with your transphobia. It can just be in what you say rather than how you say it. So I don't see it as unfair to criticize people for saying things which help reinforce transphobia, because ultimately that's what you do when you make videos like saying, oh, gender and sex are binary, you're an SJW idiot if you say otherwise. It's like, well, who does that help? It doesn't help trans people. It doesn't help people understand themselves. It helps people on the right, on the far right, and transphobes define, dictate, and control the discourse.
That it does, but when it's just criticism and nothing more of an argument, that and being called transphobic for criticizing an argument or racist or sexist or anything whatever, it's not that's not going to help anything, and that doesn't work when you're called. I've seen Bearing, and TOD. I've seen them called sexist and transphobic when they have done nothing phobic or thing like that.
I mean, Bearing's hardly the best example, is he? I mean, he made a video towards Riley Dennis recently where he deliberately misgenders her. In fact, he says they both make it, the person he collaborates with, they both make a point in the video of saying that Riley's a man when she's not at all. They call her girlfriend straight because supposedly she's dating a man when she's not. I would say Bearing pretty much sums up the definition of transphobic, to be honest. Certainly, always, if he's not, then he's doing a bad job of like displaying that he's not, because his work is a bit questionable. And yeah, there's of course, like if you just criticize something that Riley says, then yeah, if I was to say, for instance, oh, I don't agree with feminism, Riley, you're wrong. That's not a transphobic argument. I wouldn't think it's a great argument, but it's not transphobic. But the point is that when you address her arguments about gender and sex and stuff, there's a difference between criticizing it and sort of helping to reinforce negative attitudes. And a lot of people who criticize her do it in a really like obnoxious, abusive way. And so, and given the amount of abuse she's faced, you can sort of be forgiven for thinking she'd be a bit wary of those trying to criticize her, because they come with all these like awful, harassing, abusive comments. But even so, like I think that there is a lot of transphobia in society, so I don't think it's fair to just say, oh well, they call anything transphobic, because yeah, there is a lot of transphobia in society, and it's important to be aware of it so that we can move forward.
Well, there is a lot, but it's also not fair to just label someone as transphobic because they criticized a trans person said. Just like it's not fair to label someone that disagrees with you a Nazi because they're not like ultra far left liberal or whatever.
Liberal isn't actually far
that
left.
Sort of thing.
But
I'm talking, way.
I don't think I think there is actually a problem with people being incorrectly called transphobic in society. I think there actually is quite a lot. I think lots of people do exhibit transphobia in their arguments and in their worldview. I mean, just look at like basic things. Like you said, people don't see sex and gender as different things. People don't see a difference between. People don't see the world as anything but men and women. People can't distinguish that there's more to sex than genitalia. People look at the amount of jokes there are about men dressing up as women in films and like transvestites and stuff. I don't think that's even a term used anymore. But it's still like a lot of comedy is derived from that. Like there's a incredibly massive amount of transphobia in society, and even people like myself who like I'm doing this video now or debate with you now, like trying to sort of defend trans issues and stuff. But I've made mistakes in the past too. I've misgendered people because of the way the world is. There's a lot of transphobia in the world, and when we accept that, when we realize that yeah, everyone has these things they've grown up with, like that's something we need to address. It's you have to like sometimes accept that yeah, there are things that we are sometimes guilty of exhibiting discriminative behavior, and we need to address that. So instead of just blindly saying, oh well, yeah, you're why I'm moving right wing, or you're SJWs, you just call me anything. Maybe think, oh, well, maybe you do have a point. Maybe I shouldn't be just repeating rhetoric about the binary. And then we can like move on.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Crap. I did it again. Completely forgot what I was going to
say. As I said, happens to the best.
It's early.
Sorry?
It's early, so yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's actually because you're what, Eastern time you said? So like
yeah, it's 8:22 a.m.
8 in the morning. Well, we sort of we may as well sort of come to a close anyway, because I think we've been over a lot. I'll let you have the final statement as you're the guest on the show. You're the guest on the debate. So you can have your closing statement on the reflections or your view, or whatever.
Like you said, we've been over it a couple times, and we got along pretty well. I'm proud to say. I think that's about it.
You've got nothing like more to say. Has your opinion changed much, or have you mainly got the same view, or what are your views?
Mean, it's relatively the same, but I mean, it's give me a lot to think about. I'll admit that.
Well, I'm glad it has, because I think that thinking about the way we view the world is really important, and perhaps in a more mature, better YouTube, we wouldn't have so much harassment, and we'd just be able to discuss ideas without all this like bigotry and insipidness sort of infecting the discourse.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, it has been great talking to you, and we mentioned some other stuff in this chat, and it'd be great to have another discussion of a different topic in the future. So it'd be great to have you back on for a debate at some point.
It'll be fun.
So yeah, thank you for coming on, Crash, and thank you for the audience for sitting through. So great. Thanks for watching, everyone.